A few years ago, my husband had a healing in Christian Science that I'd like to share. He was working on the job in San Jose in landscaping, and he was working with a 5,000-pound skip loader. And they were moving plants around, and they were using the skip loader to do it. They thought that the skip loader had been either put and, turned off, or the brakes were on. But as he went to put something in it, the skip loader engaged. And when it did, it ran over him. The tires were, I believe, taller than he was. So in a partial rotation, it had caught his foot and got up to his pelvis and then over his shoulder, and then embedded in a building. To get it out of the building, to get it off of him, they literally had to back the skip loader over him 2 more times. In this process, over 32 bones were broken. Part of his face, cheek to jaw, was removed, and he was not doing very well at this point. They called 911, and he was taken to a hospital. And at the hospital, they literally put him in a sort of an aluminum bag and kept him. And we kept trying to find him. They called me at work to tell me that my husband was in the hospital, but not to prepare for anything good. When they tried to tell me to prepare for the worst about my husband, the thought that came to me was nothing had happened to God. And I didn't mentally, consciously decide to do this. It's just the teachings that I have learned in Christian Science, that we are God's reflection. We are His image and likeness. We didn't create ourselves. God made us. And the only power is God, and that power is good. So every time they would pick some new terrible thing to say to me, I would literally go right back to, well, that's not happening to God. They were very frustrated with my lack of hysterics, and they put a surgeon on the phone, and I say cut to the chase, got kind of gruesome and frustrated, and hung up the phone and said, just come to the hospital. That process that I went through in going straight to how was God doing? How was God? Was he being affected? Was he being diminished? Was God dying? Was God having some sort of accident or imperfection of any kind? And the answer always coming up, no. And realizing that as God's reflection, we couldn't either, even though the picture seemed very, very different. And so when we went to the hospital, we were looking for God's child. I can't, in this 2 minutes, go into all of the developments that happened, but I can tell you that in 16 days, over 32 broken bones had been set, and the doctors hadn't set them. He was having healings. He was having healings constantly. His face was replaced with brand new skin within 3 days, and the nurses had come in and read his chart and burst out into tears and say, what is happening? Because we're not doing that. He's having healings, and we're not doing the healings. And that process of going, in my thought, to what God saw, what was true about God, and staying there, regardless of all the sights that we were seeing, because it wasn't easy. I can't tell you it was easy. We had family members that were very challenged with the sight of my husband. But by holding to it, regardless, the healings became apparent. They became, I want to say, they were happening faster, and people were able to acknowledge that something was going on with my husband, and it wasn't because the doctors were doing anything. And like I said, in 16 days, they sent him home. And in 6 months, we had to go back for a insurance clearance, and they said that he had been completely healed in Christian Science. So I just wanted to say thank you. not only to Christian Science, but to Mary Baker Eddy for what she gave us with this wonderful, wonderful way of thinking about ourselves in relationship to what God already is, therefore what we are as His reflection. And of course, I want to say thank you to Christ Jesus.